Welcome to the Black Doctor Collective podcast. We as Black doctors are in a unique position. We can change our communities, healthcare, and the world. Of course, we start by changing the way we see and value ourselves. I'm your host, Dr. Shanika Horn, pediatrician and physician coach, travel extraordinaire. I am so happy to have you here and listening. So let's get into it. Hello. So I want to talk about identity today because I think there's an unconscious thing that we're doing, which is giving away our power because we feel that we have to be whoever the environment calls us to be. And some of it is so unconscious that we are just conforming to the status quo, conforming to the environment, and it's actually making us unhappy. Right? Being who other people want us to be is one of the many steps to our downfall. I think you're seeing it in the political environment right now, is everyone shifting to pander. And not to say that that's what we're doing as doctors in that extreme, although some people are. But we should not be just completely contorting ourselves to fit the expectations of administration, of patients. And that is going to be more and more important as we proceed into this uncertain future. So I had to reflect on it because I was talking to a client of mine. Actually, this is a conversation I have with several clients about setting their identity as attending physicians and what that means, like how to be a leader, even if you are not the medical director, even if you are not the department head or some kind of lead physician role. It feels so often that unless the title says it, we don't treat ourselves as such and we don't act as such. And so I've had this conversation, like I said, several times. One of the times it came up with is I have a client who is in a clinic and, some of her medical assistants weren't necessarily doing what she needed them to do to support her. And she would then go to the office manager or whoever was in charge of the medical assistants and, give her feedback, right? But she wasn't giving direct feedback to the staff. There wasn't that kind of interaction. And I realized in our conversation that she was not considering herself their leader because as far as she was concerned, they were hired by someone else. They were managed and paid and everything by someone else. And because that distinction had been made, she did not see the ways, unintentionally or subconsciously, did not see the ways in which she should be taking charge and leading a scenario. Because leadership is not the kind of thing that automatically goes with a title or a lack of title. You can be a leader regardless as to what position you're in. You can be a leader as a medical student. You could be a leader as a resident. You can be a leader as an attendant. That's not appointed to these roles, and not in the annoying way that some people have where they're like trying to boss everyone around. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like leading by example. I'm talking about clear communications. I'm talking about expectations of others where you communicate that expectation and understand that it's for the betterment of the practice or the patient. That's what I mean by being a leader. So my client and I had this conversation where I asked her what it would mean to be a leader in that space. And as we talked through it, it just became more and more clear that she had been holding herself back from communicating with her medical assistant, especially the one that worked with her most of the time. They are a team, but they were not acting as a cohesive team. They were acting as two people who just happened to be doing tasks in the same space that deferred to some other external person who was not in the space with them. So, of course, that messes up the team dynamic. I mean, there is no team dynamic, essentially. So, in review, I just thought about how we become who the environment calls us to be and how we should question that. I looked back at medical school. I think even before medical school, that the culture is preaching inadequacy. Before you even apply, someone is telling you you're not good enough. By the time you're starting to look at grades, pre-med courses, there is a constant and repeated message that you might not be good enough. They are preaching inadequacy. There's a deep culture of inadequacy in medical school and a deep culture of comparison and competition. So before you get there, you already know. This is like if you were blessed to be chosen by a school, you'd better do everything you can, right? At least I feel like that was the culture for Caribbean medical schools, but I believe it's the culture of other schools as well. This deep competition, this need to prove. So I felt that, right? Even in basic science, it was just constantly trying to get grades. You're looking at your ranking amongst the other students. There's so much comparison. You're stressed about how everyone else is doing. People used to lie about how they were doing because everyone wanted to seem like the top of the class, and no one wanted to be seen as the bottom of the class, even though C equals MD, baby. Lots of people were getting C's and still making it through. But no one wanted to be, it was like a disease. No one wanted to be affiliated with that. That translated immediately into clinicals. I got into clinicals. My first rotation was surgery, and I was unsure of what my role was, how I was going to be helpful. I didn't feel like I knew anything. And the belief there was, I am not valuable here. So what did I do? How did this manifest into my actual actions? I was walking around with a lab coat stuffed to the gills with 4x4s and saline flushes and bandages. Lord, we used to empty the little pyxis trying to be helpful, trying to carry around and having everything that was needed for any kind of bedside treatment at our fingertips so we could show that we were useful. I would be sweating holding them retractors, okay? Like trying to be the first person in the OR so that I could play a role in a surgical procedure because I was constantly feeling like I was not valuable. And so I needed to show even myself and trying to prove to others that I was valuable. Look, here I am. I can do the things. I think, I think surgery is probably a hard rotation to start with, but just in general, people will consistently tell you that you are not actually useful. So by the time I finished 12 weeks of surgery, I got into IM. I was like, nobody cares if I'm here. Literally nobody is looking for me. Nobody's asking my opinion. If they do, it's just in a matter of proving that I don't know as much as I should know. It was a very pimp me out style, right? Like you ask questions and embarrass me. And I was just so demotivated, unmotivated. And so by the time I got to IM, I disappeared early and often. As soon as they told me I could go, I was out. Because then I was like, well, what's the point? I might as well just be studying for my exams. I have no purpose here. This is not the best use of my time. By the time I hit the end of fourth year and I was in an anesthesia rotation, I ain't show up at all. I had someone to sign my paper. I don't even know how I passed that rotation. Good Lord. I don't think I went into a single anesthesia procedure. I was so removed because no one had showed investment in me and I had decided I was not going to be invested in them. Not the best attitude, right? Because actually it was for me to self-motivated, but I had lost that somewhere along the way. I had lost the ability to decide how to claim the best parts of this educational experience for my own benefit. And it was because I was constantly receiving and interpreting that reflection of nobody wants me here. I think the only time that was different was when I was in rotations I was genuinely interested in, like a lot of my pediatric rotations, where I was also trying to make connections, trying to sell myself, right? I was doing sub-highs and other things so that I could form relationships in a very short period of time in a sea of fish so that someone would choose me. Pick me, choose me. Very Grey's Anatomy moment, if you get the reference. But it's so crazy. I got to residency applications and I remember telling a friend, how am I supposed to sell myself after they have spent the last 3.5 years telling me I'm not worth anything? How am I selling this? It was a hard sell for me. I had to reroute my brain into who I needed to be a competitive residency applicant because I had felt so downtrodden by that point. By the time I got to residency, the new belief wasn't that I wasn't valuable here, was that I wasn't trusted and that everyone expected me to mess up. That was the belief that I formed. No one trusts you. The nurse go around you. Everyone second guesses you. And so I am not trusted here. I am overworked and underpaid, and I'm still constantly feeling the need to prove myself every day. I show up every day. I work ungodly hours, 24-hour shifts that turn into 30-hour shifts, 12-hour shifts that turn into 14-hour shifts. And in order to do that, I had to keep repeating certain things to myself, like I can survive anything for a finite period of time. I only thought about my time in short increments through this rotation, through intern year, through second year. How can I tackle this in bite-sized pieces? Because the whole experience was just so demoralizing, right? It didn't feel like I had the ultimate say. I couldn't see my impact, and everyone questioned everything that I did. It's not great for a learning environment. I was overwhelmed. I think this is really what led to my burnout, is not feeling valuable despite doing an exorbitant amount of work and working ridiculous hours and being really tired. That's literally the recipe for burnout. You are not valued, you are not trusted, and that is a constant reflection. So at some point in residency, I had a moment where I switched and started figuring out how to pour into myself. Like, if these people are not going to prioritize me, I need to figure out how to prioritize myself even within the system so that I don't completely drown, right? Because prior to that, I was holding my bladder for hours on end. There was times where I was in a NICU rotation where if I ate breakfast at the start of the day around 7, I wasn't touching my lunch till 9 p.m. and I was on a 24, which is really a 28. I had learned these terrible habits, terrible ways to barely make it through, right? Which means I was tired, hungry. I always needed to pee. Like, even when I went to the bathroom in the PICU, our PICU bathroom was in the unit. I've had nurses talk to me through the door while I was going to pee. Like, how long does it take to pee? And you couldn't even have that moment. So those are the messages that you're receiving as a resident, which are so harmful and are constantly telling you to put your needs behind the needs of everyone else, the patient, the families, the nurses, the respiratory therapists, like everybody that needs you gets access to you before you get access to you. And so I literally had to make a shift because I just felt like I was losing myself. And that manifested as volunteering for the wellness committee. There was a residency wellness committee, and I was like, yes, please. Doing all the little wellness programs, right? Doing yoga and trying to figure out a way to find some balance. I signed up for the gym and I went to the gym after work, trying to make sure that I took care of myself some kind of way. I really tried to shift the culture of wellness by participating in these programs because I needed it for myself. It was not me trying to really impact the impact of everything would have impacted me, but it really was for me, like me trying to survive and not suppress my needs. And then you start also, if you ever shared a call room with me, if you were on an ICU month with me and you were in the call room that I was using, you would have seen Post-its on the walls, colorful Post-its that were filled with affirmations because I was trying to affirm myself that my needs mattered, that I mattered, that someone saw me. I had to see myself. And I was putting affirmations on the wall and also hoping that it would affect the morale of my co-residents. Things like paddle like a duck or be a duck. That was the one. Be a duck where looks like you're smooth sailing on the water, but underneath you're paddling like hell. So like not letting people ruffle me, not letting people see the effects they were having on me, kind of putting up a shield, protecting myself, right? Protecting all my tender-hearted natures. And then I became a fellow. And for me, I think my fellowship is unique in that we were attendings in rural or remote locations in the US and internationally. But I had a fellow mindset. And for me, the fellow mindset was still that someone was supervising me the way they had supervised me in residency, except they weren't. So I hadn't even mentally made the leap to becoming an attending because in my mind, I'm going into fellowship. There's guidance here, there's structure here, someone's monitoring, there's people that are going to lead me. And that was not what happened, right? I was in a hospital and I was part of the attending team. And that was that. No support. No one was checking for me. I was like, so no one's going to read these notes and look over these care plans? Like, it's just me? And so I felt like I was scrambling because there was a discordance between who I thought I was going to be and who I was expected to be. And of course, I naturally rose very quickly to meet that expectation, but I still did not take the time to define the role for myself. I just had to basically, like I said, swim like a duck. So I felt like, especially in that first year, like, I don't know what I'm doing. The whole first year, I felt like that. I have no idea what's going on, and I don't know what I'm doing. I feel woefully unprepared. It just continued to add on to those feelings of inadequacy that I had starting from medical school. And on top of that, now I was really exposed because everyone could see me. There was no hidden layer of being a resident or, reporting to someone else. It was me, front and center. So I worked really, really hard. I did overtime. I went above and beyond because it was a direct reflection of me. And I was like, I can't be seen as inadequate. This would be crazy. And then I kept building on this notion that like, I need to protect me. I need to stop doubting myself. I need to rebuild my confidence that was destroyed. I need to take care of myself. So I got stronger and stronger at advocating for myself and we had already had practice at advocating for patients. So it was a little bit of a transition, right? Advocating for others does feel different from advocating for yourself. I read more books. I took online classes. I signed up for therapy. That was the first time I got a therapist, was fellowship. And it was all to try to rebuild and reconstruct the identity of who I was that I felt like I lost along the way. Because before med school, I was a full-time employee. I was a manager in a department. Me and my boss were running an $8 million financial budget at a university. I had direct reports, people who reported to me. I had this confidence of a 20-something-year-old who was running her own life. I lived in my own apartment. I paid all my own bills. I was traveling with my friends. I was having a fantastic social life. I was partying. I was going to Trinidad Carnival. Like, I had this full, whole life that I left to go to medical school. And just like that, my identity changed. Because just like that, I was in a totally new environment that was reflecting something completely different to me. So fast forward now to becoming an actual attending and being like, I need to create what I need for myself because I have burnt out doing everything for everyone else. And I don't even want to be in medicine anymore. That's how bad it was. I was like, I could quit this today. I know I spent the last decade preparing for this, but this is not what it was cracked up to be. And I cannot continue to demoralize myself, to demean myself, or to be in situations where I am demeaned, right? And that's how I ended up as a locums provider. That's how I ended up as a part-time employee because I just could not do it. So that became me trying to create my attending identity. In a locums environment, there is no one to model after. So I think in that way, I was forced to create an attending identity. I had a conversation with a client just yesterday about her attending identity and her expectation that coming out of residency and joining a clinic, she was going to be led by others, that everyone there had years of experience. So she was going to be the youngest person in the fold, almost like being a intern all over, right? You come in and there's people around you and above you that know more than you and can show you the way. And she is right now going through this grieving process because that is not the case. People grow up, but they don't always mature. And a lot of these people have never advocated for themselves. And they are just continuing to fill the status quo. And that's not who she wants to be. So she's having this cognitive dissonance around being this outspoken person who fought for her contract and really advocated for herself, and meeting people who have never done that. And there is a grieving process for that. I think no matter where you find yourself, whether it is in that environment that is nurturing and supportive and people are invested in you and you're learning, or you end up in a place where you realize that you are working on skills or developing a skill set that the people around you have no idea about and cannot nurture, I think it has to be so intentional how you create your identity. So, like I said, I lost a lot of my identity in the transition to medical school because I conformed to the status quo med student who I almost felt like I wasn't treated like an adult, even though I was, 27 years old, 28 years old, and I had already had a full career before medical school. My mindset went right back to that fresh out of college, doesn't know what she's doing person. That's how they treat you. And same for residency, same for fellowship, right? Just always being something in response to the environment, not being who I am independent of the environment. And that's like really the take home point here. You get to decide who you want to be independent of your work environment. This is where you get to decide what kind of leader you're going to be because you are a leader in the field. I don't know if you heard a previous episode where I talked about this captain of the ship concept, and it's come up a couple of times in the media. But as a physician, you are captain of the ship, and you are certainly captain of the ship when it comes to malpractice. So there is no one else that's going to shield you from legal prosecution. You are the front line, and everyone who works for you and under you is behind you, right? They are the crew on your ship. So whether or not you hire them, whether or not you do their evaluation, the mistakes they make are on your back, right? They're on your shoulders, which is why I think claiming this identity as a leader in whatever environment you're in is critical to your survival in medicine. You will not be able to shy away from that leadership role if you get prosecuted, if someone files a malpractice case against you. So it's more important to do that now and to take control over things, over the parts of your job that you can control, which is you. What does it mean to be a leader? I think, in my first job out of fellowship, the way I became a leader was in dictating my schedule. I was working 4 days a week. I didn't do nights, weekends, 24s, none of that. I chose the environment I wanted to work in. Those things were decisions I made. And that was not dependent on what necessarily someone wanted from me. That was what I decided that I was going to go after. And I did. And people started to model their schedule after mine, right? That's a very thing that I found so shocking. I say this all the time. I repeat this story all the time because I found it shocking that the Department of Pediatrics in that work environment, who had been practicing, he was well into his 60s and been practicing decades and had been a program director, chair of the department, all of these things, looked at me fresh out of training and was like, I like the schedule you've created and I want to model my schedule after yours. What? And that's what I feel like my client is going through, where she thought in going into this work environment that she was going to be the least experienced person and that she would be able to model off of others. But in fact, people are turning to her because she has modeled a part-time schedule. She has modeled administrative time. She has modeled very strict boundaries to create this career that she wants. That's what we coach through in this program, how to create that. People are seeing the effect of this negotiation process that we've gone through, and they want that. So even without intention, she has become a leader in this way. And I think it has surprised her. And it's not that she's not up to the role, but it was surprising to me too, this concept that you are creating something new when you're in a land of nothing new is original, right? Or like everyone knows more than you do. It is a surprise. It's a new identity. Another way to be leader is that other client I discussed with her relationship with her medical assistant and feeling disconnected from that team, that partnership. she changed the way that she related to that medical assistant. She changed the way that she set the pace for the day. She set the tone first thing in the morning. They started having morning chats about what the day was going to look like, what she was going to need supportive wise. And then she was able to give on the job, in the moment feedback to that person, both reinforcing and just really improve their relationship overall. So yeah, she doesn't hire or fire that person, but that person's relationship to her directly affected her workday, directly affected her patient flow. And so taking that role to be like, I'm the leader of this two-person team, and this is what I need, and this is the way we should work together, and give me feedback, and let's have an open and honest exchange, totally shifted the way that the workday went for her. Taking responsibility for what you can control is the absolute thing. If only you can make something better, if it was all on you to make something faster, easier, smoother, what would you do? Evaluate, right? Because we think that because we are not the boss, it is not our job to evaluate. We are going along to get along. But around here, we don't believe in that. So that is what I think about when I say, like, oh, let's be a leader in our space. And the thought is, I control me and I control my immediate work environment. And so I get to decide, the order that I want things done in, or what things I want my staff around me to double check, and the way that we do our patient encounters. I get to determine that. And the belief is I am in control of my environment. And that leaves me feeling empowered, positive, confident. And that's after I take the action, right? I always talk about confidence does not come before you do the thing. It comes after. So I feel positive and I look forward to my day because now I'm working with a team. It's a collaborative experience. It is not the experience where I have no autonomy and I'm just a cog in a wheel. People will treat you like a cog in the wheel and you can decide to accept it or you can decide not to. And for me, I refuse. I refuse because this cog has way too much student loan debt and has spent way too much time in her life to get where she's gotten, and to not have people who have not done the same thing or have that same level of commitment tell me what I can and cannot do. So I feel empowered. I feel powerful because of this decision. And because I'm constantly thinking about how to make my work environment better and how I want to show up and who I want to be, I then become this thought leader because what I'm saying is derived from improving my work environment for me. But everybody wants an improved work environment. Don't let anybody tell you they don't want that. Everybody wants that. So you become this thought leader where people are then looking and listening to you, hearing what you're saying, and trying to see how to apply it for themselves. I want to be very clear. This is not Captain Save-A-Ho. Okay. This is not the same thing as being the savior, the spokesperson, the mouthpiece, because that becomes exhausting. That becomes too much of a burden if you are the only person that consistently speaks up over time for everyone else's needs and no one is showing up for you. It's easy to get positive reinforcement from those kinds of interactions where everyone's rooting for you and cheering you on from the sidelines without actually sticking their own neck out. They're coming to you and you are this spokesperson. There is a dopamine hit that happens when you get to be the spokesperson. But after a time, you begin to resent those people because they never learn to stand up for themselves. They always rely on you and they only congratulate you behind the scenes. I remember once in fellowship, I spoke up in a department meeting. It was all the pediatricians and the department chair, and I can't even remember what the topic was about. But in that moment, I rose my hand and I made an argument that was contradicting what was suggested. And people were kind of nodding and, we ended up moving that direction. And when I came out of the meeting, one of the other pediatricians pulled me aside and said, "Oh my God, I'm so glad you said that. That was such a good moment. But why didn't you back me up in the meeting, ma'am? Why you wait until we came outside?" That's shiesty. I don't like that kind of behavior. And that, after a time, wears you down. It totally becomes a burden when you feel like you're the only one speaking up and no one has your back. So I want to say, like, me being the thought leader in environment is not about anybody else. And it's not about becoming the default spokesperson and carrying the weight of the world on my back. I am not the Black woman savior. I'm not here to step out onto your glass cliff and resurrect things when things are about to fall apart. I'm doing it because I am shaping my life and the environment that I want to be in. And so I will speak up for the things that are important to me. And I decide what is the priority. Which things do I take up arms for? It is not a default take up arms for everything and everyone. That can't happen. But people will think that that's your role because people love to place the burden on a Black body. Okay. But that is not what's actually happening here. So think about who you want to be. Think about the ways in which you can start to impact that kind of change from now, regardless as to what position you're in, and start to see how that impacts your life. Yes, you're going to have to deal with some discomfort. You're going to have to be a little bit uncomfortable in showing up in a way probably you have not shown up before. But I think if you give yourself grace and know that you're not going to get it right exactly the first time, and that you treat everything with kindness and curiosity, generally things will improve in your favor, right? Of course, there's a little bit more nuance to it. How to navigate that? What are the right things to say? What are the relationships that are worthy of this type of investment? There's a lot to consider. These are the things that we talk about on our coaching calls. Like, how do you establish yourself, especially in environments where you are the minority, you are the only, you are the first, only different? There's a lot of nuance to that. And so that's something we discuss on an individual basis in these calls because each environment is so different. But generally speaking, what I want for you as the audience here is to at least take a look, start to build that awareness of the ways in which you have just kind of gone along to get along and how that hasn't served you. And when you realize, okay, that hasn't served you and I want to make a change, here's how I can make this change is by assuming a new identity. Assuming that you have control over you, other people don't have control over you. You decide to comply with whatever they're saying. That's a decision. And trying to make new decisions that improve your life and that impact your life. So all of these concepts, being a thought leader, having these things introduced to your psyche, all of this is what you get in the end-of-day negotiator. I'm going to plug this program because I believe so strongly in this program. And these women are bosses. I don't even like to say boss women because you're just a boss. If you were a man, we would never say you're a boss man. You're just a boss. So these women are bosses. And they are really shaking things up for the better in their life. And that is having a ripple effect, not just in their career, but in their personal life, in their social life. Like, there's so many ways that these things, these concepts that we're learning trickle out. And you get to decide if that's something you want for yourself because you are in power. You are in control of your life. That's all I got to say. I am actually back in the clinic. Had been out for like 6 weeks because, like I said, I don't like to go nowhere in January. Don't do it. So I'm back. I'm in my new role as medical director in this clinic. And yeah, I'll keep you guys posted on how that journey goes because now I'm a leader, not just a leader in my own mind, but a leader in presence and physical form. So I will share more about that in the future. Enjoy your day. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. Please subscribe to the podcast. And what I want you to do next is link us everywhere you can. Instagram @The Black Doctor. Just become part of our collective. I want you here. Thanks. Until next time. Bye.